welcome to another tutorial. I'm Jim McIntosh. This week's tutorial is a great one. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because it looks so hard to do. Now, I am going to be introducing you to a couple of new techniques. Don't panic. Everything's going to be fine. And a couple of new, inexpensive hand tools. We're not going to go crazy with tools, and we're not going to go crazy with materials. But what we're doing is we're going to make a pair of earrings that take wire wrapping techniques and incorporates them into a piece of metal. These earrings are great, and I'm going to show you really basic ones. I want you to think about the shape of the metal and making some changes, and you'll understand that a lot more as we go on. So this is the basic tutorial. Now, if you're on my Patreon, which there's a link down in my description, I'm going to be showing you very soon how to take this project and expand it to add more to it. So if you're one of my Patreon members, you're in for a treat, okay? If you aren't one of my Patreon members, consider going over there and checking it out, okay? There's a link down in the description that'll take you right there. So let's wander over to the bench, and I'm going to give you a closer look as to the project we're going to be making. So let's head over there now. So here's a closer look at the project we're going to be making. This is an earring. I've got the matching earring next to it right here. And it's very easy to make. All it is it's a piece of 22 gauge copper sheet that we're going to be cutting down. And it's wire wrapped, and holes have been made in the sheet with a very simple punch tool that I'm going to show you in just a minute. But it's a very easy piece to make. It looks complicated, but there's lots of things that you can do with this to change the shape of the back of this and many other different things. Just use your imagination on it, but very easy piece to make. So let me show you just a couple of things to familiarize you with. So this is the copper sheet that we're going to be using. This is a 12 by 12. I bought a nice big sheet. You can get this in much smaller sizes, 6 by 6, 6 by 3 inch. Lots of different things, but it's just copper sheet. It's thin. It's very easy to use. And to get what we need out of it, we're going to be using these shears. These shears are great. They will cut through this 22 gauge metal very easily, and that's what they're designed for. And you can pick these up. I think I bought these for like $8. Very reasonably priced. Nice tool to have. Even if you don't have a lot of strength in your hands, this will help get through the metal pretty easily. So this is a good tool to have. And then the other tool we're going to be using is this. It's a Euro punch. These are old. Okay, they're filthy. They're old. I've had these for a long, long time. But if you've ever used, say, a handheld hole punch, that's basically the same idea. You've got this little hole on this side of the jaws that this punch will fit into. And we're going to center this over where we want to make our holes. And you're just going to punch through it. And as I said, the copper is soft metal, so it's easy to get through. These also don't take a whole lot of strength to use. And when you buy, I think this was like $15 maybe. I bought these for. I've got all of the links in the description as to where you can get these. So it's a handy tool, and it really does open up a lot of wire wrap possibilities for you. Okay, so these were the specialized tools we're going to be using. Let me give you a list of all of the rest of the tools you'll need for this project. So here's the stone that we're going to be using. It's a piece of chrysoprase that I'm using. It looks better in person. It looks kind of dull here, but this is 15 millimeters wide, and that's important to know because it's going to help us figure out the measurements that we want to make each of these pieces, each of this strip. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to lay this out. So 15 millimeter wide stone, I want to bring it down to about an 8 millimeter wide strip of this. Now, why do I do that? Because I want some of the stone peeking out of the sides on here. Notice some of it is peeking out of the sides of this. The reason being is it's easier to set these prongs, and we wouldn't have to then cut any grooves in the metal where the prongs would go here. So all we're doing is we're just making holes for these top two prongs. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut 2 strips out of here, and it's going to be a total width of 16 millimeters. So that we said we were going to cut these at 8 millimeter strips, so we're going to cut 2 of them. That gives us 16 millimeters. So line up your measuring device, as my old high school shop teacher used to say, measuring device, and just mark the bottom corner here at 16 millimeters. Now the length of each of these is going to be 40 millimeters. So set the scale here at 40 and then make a mark across. And to finish this up, then we'll measure the top section at 16 millimeters. There it is. And now we'll just square this up. So line everything up and make a straight line down. Now we need to make 2 of these at 8 millimeters. So again, we're gonna go down here to 8 millimeters, just right there, and we'll do the same thing up here at the top at 8 millimeters right there, and then we'll mark the center of that, and this is going to give us our 2 strips of metal that we're going to need, and we'll cut these out with the shears in just 1 second. So this is what it ends up looking like. Very easy tool to use. So let's try and get all the glare off of here. There we go. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the shears and I'm going to cut right on the line I made. Very easy. And then we'll do the same thing here. And it's just like cutting paper, except for much thicker. And these shears are a lot better. So be careful with them, that your shears could be sharp. Now, you don't need to get these shears. If you've got metal cutters of some other sort, you can go to a big box, one of the big box home improvement stores, and you can get metal cutters. They may not be as fine as these, and they may not be as straight cutting. They may be side cutting, but they work just the same. And now we're going to cut down that center line that we made, cutting the metal in half. So now you should have 2 strips, both approximately 8 millimeters wide. Now, look at how curly and wonky they look. So to straighten that out, we're going to pull out our handy dandy trusty bench block. And we're going to take the metal and place the metal on there and just tap it with a rawhide mallet to straighten the metal out. Okay. As well as flip it over and do the same thing on the back. And you just want to take the curve out of there. So there's one, and then we can do the other one. Now notice as I'm doing this, I'm keeping my fingertips off of my bench block, and the area that I want to hammer is on the bench block. The reason for that is I don't want to smash my fingers. Makes sense, doesn't it? So that's a good, just kind of an easy way of making sure you don't hit your fingertips with your chasing hammer. So, or with any hammer. I'm not using a chasing hammer. This is a rawhide mallet. Now, something I want to point out on these is they've got very, very sharp edges. How do you fix that? A few different ways that you can do that. First of all, you can use a needle file and you can clean up your edges. And shape this. Now I like to kind of round these corners ever so slightly so that they're not sharp, but also the edge right here. Sometimes when you're cutting with shears, they can cause a slight sharp edge. So if you want to avoid that, you can also file that edge down as well. But I'm going to show you the other tool that, you know me, I love to use this tool, but I've got my rotary tool, my handy dandy Dremel. So here's my handy dandy Dremel. I just got this cover on it just to shield me from getting shot at with pieces of metal. But I've got in here, I've got one of those silicone polishing tips. And again, to get these, there's a link down in the description as to where you can get them. But this works great to soften those edges. So we'll soften those edges with this. So that was pretty simple. So we're going to do the same thing with this. Now I want to let you know that I'm not going to be duplicating everything on this video for you. So assume that what I do to one, I do to the other. Okay? Let's move on to the next step. Now that we've got the pieces cut out that we're going to use, we need to add these punch holes to it. We need to punch some holes in this. So we want them centered down the length of this. And we're going to punch 3 holes in here. But first, before we do that, we want to lay it out. So we're going to use a Sharpie. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to find the center of this. So we said that we cut this at 8. So the center of this would be 4 millimeters. So I'm going to make a mark here at the bottom at 4 millimeters. And I'm going to spin it around. I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. I'm going to mark this section here at 4 millimeters. And then I'm going to join these 2 lines together. So set that there and then draw a line down the center. So this helps us see the middle of this sheet. Now, you want to determine what's the top and the bottom, because the next measurement we're going to make is this mark here where the earring finding goes. And I'm using a silver one. I only had silver ones. I don't have any copper earring findings, but I like these surgical steel. Nice earring finding. So the earring finding is going to go 2 millimeters down the center of this. So let's bring us back into range here. All right, and I'm going to measure 2 millimeters, and I'm going to just make a line across, and where they intersect, that's where I'm going to punch the hole. From the bottom, we're going to measure 5 millimeters. This would be the bottom hole for the setting that we're going to be making for our prong setting. So I'm 5 millimeters from the bottom. I'm going to make another line across there. Now, to get the top part, to get this right here, this hole here for the top of the stone, I'm going to actually set my stone on top of my finding, or on top of my copper sheet, and I'm going to line the bottom of the stone up with that bottom mark that I made 5 millimeters from the bottom of the copper sheet. And then at the top of that, I am just going to make my other mark. So that will measure, that will tell me the length of that stone from here to here. You could also just measure that out with this, with a measure from here to here. It's 18 millimeters, so you could just use this and measure it up. I just find it easier to just do that. So now we can set that aside. Now comes the fun part. Hole punch. Inside of your hole punch is the actual thing that punches through the metal right here. That little thing. It's not very sharp, but it's a strong piece of metal that's going to punch through this. You want to line that up over the top where everything intersects. So where the center line here intersects with the line we made going across the piece. You want to line up the punch. Now, it's kind of difficult to see where at, but notice I'm kind of right on that mark. Now, I look at it from several angles because sometimes one angle I get, see, I had to readjust this because from this side it wasn't centered. But I look at it from every angle to make sure it's where I want it, and then I squeeze. And it's going to pop out a hole, punch a hole, but it's going to pop a little, the metal out of the bottom, this little hole there. Now just open the pliers, and you're going to have to wiggle this back and forth a little bit to get this off that post. But it will come off. It just takes a second there. So here's what we did. We punched a hole. You can see that. Punched a hole right through the center there. And I want you to do the same thing with the other two. So line up the punch where you want to make your hole. Check it to make sure that that's exactly where you want it, and adjust if need be. Yes, I'm just slightly off there. Okay. That's where I want it. Punch it, and then wiggle it off. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Come on. Come off. There we go. And then the last one, down here at the bottom, we will line it up where we want it. Double check it from every angle. And then punch it. So let me show you what we've got. So let me wiggle that off. So we've got 3 holes. We got the top hole for the earring finding, and then these will be for the setting. So if we were to set the stone here on top of it, you should just see the holes that you just made peeking out from the top and the bottom of the stone. See? That's what we want. So now duplicate that with the second one. And you'll notice something else. On the back opposite where you made the punch, you'll see that there's some pieces sticking up a little bit. That's just where the metal flared out. If you take a flat file, or if you take your rotary tool with the polisher on it, that one we use to clean up the edges, you can file that off. Okay, so do that. And then I bet you're wondering what we're going to do with the front of this with all of that permanent marker on it. If you've seen any of my other videos where we've used permanent marker, I removed it. I'm getting something to be able to, we use just nail polish remover. I'm going to use just a little tissue here, and we're going to clean that off of the front of here and make sure it looks nice and good. There we go. See, so that comes off. You may have to kind of get it a couple of times because some of it leaves a little residue, but just clean all of that off with just some nail polish remover. There. See, so this is what the piece looks like, all cleaned up. Okay, so we're going to duplicate that on the second one, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I'll see you in the next step. So this is what we have right now. We've got both of our pieces. We've got our holes punched in them. The next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to add some texture to the front of these. So determine which side is the front. And I use my bench block for this with my chasing hammer. So we're going to put the bench block on our piece on the bench block. And we're going to use the ball peen side of the chasing hammer. And all we're going to do is tap some little divots in the front of this. And I'm going to do it down the whole length of this. And again, make sure you're not hitting your fingers as you're doing this. And you can just make sure you keep your hands off of it. I wasn't doing that. I was being very bad and not showing you the right way. And we'll just do the whole front of this. Now, once you get the divots in there that you like, once you add the texture that you want, you'll notice that it curved it a little bit. And that's normal for the metal to bend. So just turn it over and hammer against that bend and take it out. I'm using the rawhide mallet for that so that I don't put any marks in it. But that's what we end up with. So now notice how it reflects the light. So do the same thing with the second one. And then we're going to now move on to making the setting. So these are done. You can set this aside. So now that we've got our wires cut, I want you to take some painter's tape and we're going to gather everything at the ends. We're going to put a piece of tape across all 4 wires after we've got them straightened out. Now, they're relatively straight, so I'm going to continue doing that. I'm just making a little flag of tape on each side of my wire bundle towards the end. And actually, I want to make sure I can still see the ends. So here I've got 2 flags on the ends. So the next thing we need to do is we need to lay out our wrap area. So we said our wire was about 40 millimeters long. So we're going to find the middle of our wire bundle, which is the center would be 20. So make a mark across there at 20. Now remember, we said our stone is 18 millimeters long. I generally like to make a wrap area that's about half the length of the stone. So half of 18 millimeters is 9. And so we're going to go 9 millimeters wide on this. So from this center mark, we're going to go 4.5 to the right. And we're going to go 4.5 to the left. That is our total wrap area for this. So then the next step, what we'll do is we're going to use a needle file and we're going to file across this wrap area and then wrap it together. So let's move on to that right now. So now that we have measured out the wrap area for this, what we're going to do is we're going to use a needle file and we're going to file a groove, just a very slight groove in here. The reason for this is we want to wrap this area in that groove so that it prevents all the wires from moving around. And cutting that groove will just give it just enough of a shoulder to do that. So I'm using a needle file. Now this is a triangle needle file. I like this one because I'm going to set this down. I like this because I like to take the edge and I like to score. So I'll file across on that edge right where my wire wrap area, that marked area, is going to begin and end. And this kind of creates just an area. So let me bring this closer to you. So you see that bright area? I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and then I'm going to file across all the wires. And I'm doing this on both of them, but right now I'm just starting here on the edge, right here. And I'm just going to put just a slight groove there. That helps me remember where we're going to begin and end. And then I'm going to use the flat side, and I am going to file across all 4 of these until I get a very slight groove cut in here. So I've got pretty much the filing area done. Pretty much did all of this off camera because it is pretty boring to sit and watch, but straighten these wires back up. So that's what we've got. We've got this little area here. And what we need to do now is we need to actually add a wrap to this. So I'm going to get 18 gauge half round wire, and I'm going to use about a 6-inch piece of this. Maybe a little bit more than that. And with my wire wrap pliers, so let's set the wrap wire down. Okay, there we go. So let's set our wire wrap pliers just outside the area where we want to wrap. We're going to insert the half round wire into the jaws, and we're going to wrap that area that we just filed. It shouldn't take too much to do this. I'm just going to keep going till we get to the other side. There we go. And I'm setting this as I go. Let me reset that right there. Okay, so we've got the center area wrapped. I'm going to trim off this excess wire. We'll trim the short side. And I'm going to trim these so that they're about half, the end of that comes about halfway through the center of the wire bundle. That way it doesn't catch anybody on the edge. Okay, so that's what we've got. So now that we've got that wrapped up nice and tight, we can take the tape off. Oops, there we go. Now, what we want to do with these prong wires is we want to set them so they're in about the right position. So take these outside wires, and I want you to move them out to they're almost flat. Almost flat. So do the same thing with this one so that it's almost horizontal. I said flat, but I meant horizontal. I know everybody's going to say, what does he mean by flat? Horizontal. And they don't have to be exactly horizontal. We're going to make an adjustment with these in a minute, but just spread these out until all 4 prongs are about horizontal. Okay, so there we go. So now this is what you end up with. It's something about like that. So it looks like somebody jumping up in the air. Whee! All right, now we're going to set up everything to bend these into prongs. So let's do that in just a second. So this is what we've got. We've got our prong wires, these outer wires moved outward now, almost flat, horizontal, as I said. What we want to do now is we want to mark each of these prongs so that we can bend them in the right place. So to do that, set the prong setting in front of you. I want you to take your stone and you'll set it next to your wrap. Now make sure that you've got your wrap with the cut sides facing you, because that's going to be up against the stone and up against the metal. But I want you to center the stone vertically on here. So I've got it about in the center. So once you have it in the center, just move it up now over the setting and set it in the middle. And then take your fine tip permanent marker, and we're going to mark each prong where it comes out from the stone. So just go around, and on each prong just make a mark where the edge of the stone is. This is going to tell us where to bend each one of these, and you may have to kind of maneuver this around a little bit in order to get to each prong, but there's the last one right there. So now each of these should have a mark on them where we're going to make our wire bend, or our bends in the wire, excuse me. So we'll do that now. So take your wrap pliers, your wire wrap pliers, and I want you to line up the tip of the pliers with the mark that you've made, and you're just going to bend toward you. So we're going to bend it into that shape. What we're doing is we're going to make kind of a cup kind of thing. So do that with each one of these. So just bend it upward toward you at that mark that you've made, all the way around on each one of these prongs. Okay, and we got one more. Now the really, really important ones are these center ones. You want to make sure you get those bent in the right place. So after you've bent all of the prong wires, this is what it should look like. So if you take the earring backing, and we just want to take the center wire, and we want to insert that into the two holes in the backing. That's where it's going to set. So it may take a little doing. You may have to take your pliers out and maybe do a little rebending, like I'm going to have to do. There. Just straighten that out a little bit. And there. Kind of used my wire wrap pliers to get in there. But this is what you should end up with. So now that you've got your prongs, these center prongs in through these holes, kind of bend them outward a little bit. We just want a little bit extra room. And then also what I want you to do is I want you to bring these outside prongs so that they are on the sides of here. So I've moved these out. So remember I said I wanted to move these down horizontally here in the back? This is what I mean. We're going to put these on the sides of the metal where they come out on the side of that backing plate. This gives us the room to be able to now take the stone. Like I said, I'm using a slippery chrysoprase. So now we just want to take the stone and we want to put it in the setting, and we want to center it in there. There. So take your stone. So now I've got it centered in there. And holding the stone against the backing plate, the earring backing, take these wires that come outside, not the ones that go through the metal, but the ones that are outside the metal. I want you to take the prongs one by one, opposites. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to move over here and just bend them up over the stone. That will keep everything centered. And then take these prongs that go through the metal and then bring them up over the stone. That will make sure that everything stays centered on the piece. So that's what you should have. Now let's go on to the next part of clipping and measuring and cutting each of these prong wires. So now that we've got all of the prongs up over the stone, and you make sure that it is centered, the stone is centered on the backing plate within there, and you may have to do some adjusting, but just make some little movements to scoot it over. You may have to undo some of the prongs and push them back over. But what we need to do now is we need to trim each one of these prongs. So we're going to measure to see how long we want each of these. And I'm measuring from the bottom of the stone right here up the length of the prong to see kind of where I want to do it. I want to make sure that it's up over the stone, so it looks like about 6 millimeters. So I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to line up 6 millimeters at the bottom of my stone, right about there. And then I'm going to mark the prong. And that's where I'm going to cut each prong. So let's do that. Let's continue around. Okay, and then we got the last. So here we are, we're on the last prong. So I'm lining this up with 6 millimeters, and I'm going to make my last mark. Okay, so all of the prongs are now marked. We can go ahead and trim them at the marks that we made. I'm just shooting wire all over the place. You can hear it just pinging off the walls. Oops, I cut this one a little long. There we go. And all I'm doing is I'm just trimming each prong at the mark I just made for each one. Usually I cover these up with my finger there, just so I don't shoot myself in the eye with it. Now some of these look a little long, I think. I'm going to trim these back just a hair, and I'm going to eyeball this, I think, just to kind of get these where I like them. There we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to clean these up just a bit with either a file or we'll use our Dremel tool. Filing is really easy to do. You just use the needle file to go over and curve the end of the prong. So I'll use my file, and I'm going to take the stone out first, but all I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this file to round this off. So let's take the stone out, and we'll remove the stone, and I'll show you what I mean. So now the stone is out. And I'm just going to take a file, and I'm going to file this end down so that it has a curve. But you know me, I like my Dremel tool. So I'm going to use this Dremel with the silicone polisher in it. And I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do this all off camera for you. And I'm just going to round these off. I'm going to do most of it off camera. Alright, so that's about it. So there we go. So we've got all of our prongs put into place. We can reset our stone, and it looks like we are about done. So put the stone back in. May have to, some of your prongs may have moved slightly out of the way, so you may need to open them up just a little bit. There we go. And then just work the prongs back over. Now notice how I do this. I'll show you the upside down. So I put one at the bottom of the prong, and then I put one of the part of the jaws on top of the prong, and then I just push it all in. And you work in opposites when you're setting stones, so that helps keep everything centered. So then we go to this one. And we'll go to this last one here, and then we'll do the top and the bottom. So we got that one. And then we've got the top. And then we've got the bottom. There we go. So everything's all set into place. Looks like everything's kind of moved a little bit. Hold on. Hold on. We are not centered here. There we go. So now all that's left is adding an earring finding, and you've got your earrings finished. It's a pretty simple task, but with just a few little hand tools, it turns into a really nice project. Okay, I hope you didn't panic, but that was pretty easy, wasn't it? You know, all of the things I teach you guys, I try to teach you from a beginner's point of view, and many of you have many years of wire experience, and you're still checking out my stuff, and that's great. Hopefully I didn't make it too simple for you. But the techniques I just showed you are great techniques, and there's lots of ways that you can use it. One of the things I think about is thinning out the metal even more. Maybe going with maybe a 3 or 4 millimeter wide strip, and then putting that on there so you get a nice post type earring. That's just something I'm thinking about. You can change the shape of the metal. There's lots of things to think about, but when you're doing it, I want you to think about where you're putting your prongs. So think about that. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoy teaching you guys, and I really enjoy sharing what I know about wire art and what I've come up with, the designs I've come up with, and some of the adjustments I've made. So I'm hoping you're enjoying it. Please do me a favor, let me know that you enjoy it by giving me that thumbs up. Boom, boom, boom. I would appreciate you knowing that you appreciate my work. Leave me a comment below as well. I really do like to hear from you guys. Many of you are sending me emails, and you're letting me know what you think, and you're giving me tips. I've got a few people that have sent me tips on things that they've found, and we're going to try and incorporate some of those tips in some of our Hot Tip Tuesdays coming up. So stay tuned for some of those. But I really appreciate everybody supporting the channel. And again, head over to Patreon, see how you can expand your support just a little bit more. I could really use your help. So I appreciate everybody stopping by. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that bell. And again, I'm Jim McIntosh, and I want you to remember, always, always remember, practice, practice, practice.